This is My Cars Shop.
Welcome back. Today it's a Talk About It Tuesday, and we're going to talk about how the little bite philosophy applies if you only have one project. I mean, what if you're waiting on parts, or you're stuck because you're waiting on something, or I don't know, there's all kinds of challenges we can face when we're only doing one project. How can we apply the little bite philosophy? Let's talk about it. I'm Mike, and you're watching My Cars Shop. While it's true that I have over 12 project cars to work on in the shop, there have been times in my life when I've only had one or two. And the little bite philosophy can be more of a challenge when you don't have multiple projects to focus energy on because you're waiting on parts for that, and that's at that stage waiting on this, and I need this for that, and I need that for this, and well, let's go work on that project there. When you only have one car, it can be a bit tougher. Well, here's how I always handled it. I haven't always had a big garage, and even though I've had just one or two cars for long periods of time in my life, my bigger challenge was I didn't have the shop space. In fact, when I painted my 1931 Ford, I only had a very small one-car garage to work in. It was a challenge. One thing that I found when I had such a small garage was there was a lot of things that needed to be done on the car that I couldn't do in the garage, but had to do outside the garage when the car was in the driveway. And that presented great challenges because where I live in Michigan, the weather's not always conducive to working outside about 8 months out of the year. So it required me to get creative. If I was going to move forward on the project, what could I do or should I do to be able to work on the car, even though maybe I couldn't work on the major part of the project that I wanted to? Several creative ways that I found to get around some of that, so I was always making little bites forward on the project, was working on things that I could, even if it was in the house, like sitting at the kitchen table detailing, with lots of cardboard and newspapers down, detailing the instrument panel or the instrument cluster, taking it all apart, cleaning everything up, maybe repainting what needed to be repainted with the model paints and a brush. I remember taking things down the basement in my house there and working on some things on the workbench, like rebuilding the carburetors, for example. Even though I wasn't anywhere near the point that the car was going to be running, I was doing things like that. There was a period of time when I would take the car and put it in storage, and I would have things at home like fenders and doors and work on those in the garage. I was always trying to find a way to be able to accomplish something on the project and move it forward. There eventually did come a time when the project came to the place where I needed to do some major work I couldn't do in my garage, and I took it to a buddy's house and did things like hanging on quarter panels and stuff like that. But if you really think about it, there's lots of little bites we can take on a project, even if we only have one car, that may not be the major thrust of what we need to be working on now, but they're investments we can make in the future of the project, so that when we get to it, that stuff is already done, and all we have to do is bolt it on or weld it on or bolt it in or whatever needs to be done at that point. I think one key in that also is there was times I didn't feel like working on welding in customized trunk floors and wheel tubs on that Pro Street car, and I would just pick some little thing to tick away at. I remember was in the midst of some heavy fabricating stuff because of Pro Streeting that car and feeling like I just need to do something mundane. And so the front fenders weren't on the car, and I took a propane torch and a putty knife and scraped off all of that original factory undercoating on those fender wells to get rid of that and get that all cleaned up. Or maybe I would jack the front of the car up and work on some of the front suspension parts or whatever. There's always a little something. So let's look at another project and how I handled that one. When I purchased my 1947 Ford Fat Fanny that you see here on the channel, we were still in our original house before we went through the foreclosure. And the car I was not really at that point able to work on it. It was too big a project to do in my little garage. So I had another little teeny building in the back that was basically a snowmobile shed that I had the car parked in And the car didn't even fit in. It was like a half-car garage. But I had the front of the car covered up with tarps so I wouldn't get yelled at from the village for having junk cars on the property, because that was a thing. But I remember wanting to do stuff on that car. So one of the things that I did was I ordered all of the chrome dash components for that, and I took all the instrument clusters out of the original dash, which was plastic and deteriorated, and took those down the basement in my house. And for a couple of weeks in the winter, I had a TV in my basement I would turn on and watch TV Land or drag racing or whatever back in those days, and just sit there at my workbench and just polish stuff up and clean stuff up. And I remember such a sense of satisfaction of taking those gorgeous instrument clusters when they were all cleaned up and putting them on the shelf so I could admire them. That itself brought me energy. Another thing that you can do that I used to do all the time is peruse. So maybe I can't work on the car itself, but maybe there's stuff I need, and I still do this to this day. And maybe I should share some of that on the channel. Peruse, looking for deals, looking for parts, looking for stuff. Maybe I go junkyard walking. Maybe I call some friends and say, like for example, right now I'm looking for a piece of upper door trim for an 82 to 87 Dodge pickup. I need one more stick of that upper door trim for the custom project I'm doing on Fat Fanny. And I call around to friends. I was just the other night texting with a buddy of mine down in Kentucky saying, hey man, I need this upper door trim. Can you find me a piece? It doesn't need to be perfect. Something I can fix. I'm pretty good at fixing stainless. I just need something I can work with. So far I haven't found that piece, although I did just run across on Marketplace, because I spend a lot of time in the library looking at Marketplace. There was a guy just 40 miles from here who had an incomplete 84 Dodge pickup that had all the trim on the truck for $300. Boy, it was tempting. If I had $300, here's the thing. Those sticks of trim, the complete set of trim is worth more than the $300 he was asking for that truck. So that's another thing that I do, is look for things like that I could grab, get parts off of that I need, and then flip and make some money on. All of it continues to build energy for doing more stuff on the project. And remember, when one bite is done, it's done. And it may be on the shelf ready to go on the car, but the fact is it's ready, and when you get to that point, you don't have to do anything except put it on. Here's another one that may be a little less intuitive. Sometimes, even with 12 projects, I just don't feel like working on anything. So then I look at the shop itself and I say, what can I do right now, or what needs to be done in here right now, so that when I am ready to work on a project, things are in better shape, so it's a less frustrating experience and I just don't want to turn the lights out, go in the house and watch TV. There's always that. That's part of the reason for the shop organization series, because shop organization and maintenance has always been a frustration to me. And learning my own organizational style has been huge. And if you're new to the channel, there's a whole big playlist on all of this, talking about the different organizational styles and how all of us are different, and learning to understand ourselves and what comes natural to us can make organization come natural rather than being an event. But let's face it, we all have times we have to push a broom and just throw away the trash and push the walls back once in a while. Sometimes just doing that builds energy to get back and work on one little bite on the project. Remember that we promote the little bite philosophy. The elephant gets eaten one little bite at a time. And I bet sometimes if you just pulled up a bench and sat down and looked at your project, you could see some little bite somewhere on your project that may not be a part of the big picture goal right now, but it's still something that does need to be done. And diving into that little thing because it sounds fun can build energy to get back to the other thing that you really need to be doing. Well, that's my thoughts on this one. Drop your comments down there. I'd appreciate it. I always love hearing from you guys. You offer great comments and even good constructive criticism. But again, we don't welcome the flaming ashtray comments where people come in clumping around with boots and spurs and don't even know what they're talking about and just criticize for the sake of showing their superiority. None of you guys are like that, but I'm just saying it happens, and those aren't welcome here. All right. I got to rock and roll all night and party every day. We'll catch you on the next one.